Should terastallization be banned? Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. You can be talking about in singles, in draft league, whatever the case may be. Let me know your thoughts and why down below. Hey guys, John Jr. here. I'm bringing you guys another competitive Pokemon analysis, and that is exactly what we are going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about terastallization, the effects on competitive Pokemon, and whether or not it is a fair, balanced mechanic that should be allowed. Now, to set the stage, I'm going to be completely upfront. We're not talking about VGC. VGC is another beast. I'm not the best at VGC. Yes, I enjoy it. No, I'm not the one to talk about it. This is for singles, specifically draft leagues. Smogon is a whole nother beast, and I completely understand why they are looking into it right now, because Smogon likes to stay competitive, which is why there's like sleep clause and species clause and things like that. And I completely understand a lot of people being like, okay, this is a little bit uncompetitive. There are 18 different types on potentially 6 different Pokemon that we have to be ready for at all times, and it's a little uncompetitive in that sense. And I completely get the argument to leave it be, but I completely also get the argument that it should be banned. That's not what I'm talking about today. Terastallization, when controlled, I think is a fantastic mechanic. It is a breath of fresh air, and I'm gonna be the first to say I was completely wrong about this mechanic going into this generation. I thought it would be good for Smogon, bad for draft, and I completely actually think it's the other way around. In Draft League, there have been a lot of different ways that we have seen terastallization try to be used, because it's not as overbearing as Dynamax was last generation. Because if you guys remember early Gen 8, or if you weren't there, Dynamax was so unbelievably overbearing. There were a couple leagues that tried to allow it with like a low tier captain, and then everybody kind of collectively agreed, okay, this is stupid, we literally just can't allow this, it's so uncompetitive, pushed it to the side, and it was forgotten about primarily the entire generation, until the end when people started getting a little bit bored, but that's a story for another day. Terastallization, however, is different than Dynamax in the fact that it is playable. It is actually a fun mechanic and can be somewhat balanced if you control it. There have been 4 primary different ways that I've seen terastallization try to be utilized in Draft League, and obviously there's been a couple little tweaks to the rules here and there, but there have been 4 major rules that have been branched off upon that I would like to talk about today. Those rules, in the order that I'm going to be talking about them, are going to be completely free Tera. You do not have to pick a captain. Anything can Tera into anything. The second one is you can pick one captain and it can Tera into anything. Free Tera, one captain. Third is you pick 2 captains and each one gets 1 Tera type. And then the last one is going to be you pick 2 captains and they get 1 Tera type on top of their stabs. Like I said, there's been some variants in between these, and I'm going to talk about those as we get to those. But the first one, there's like literally you can't have any variants of this, is the free Tera completely. And in my opinion, there's no place for this, specifically in Draft League. Free Tera makes it completely uncompetitive. Instead of Smogon, where there are already 6 Pokemon you have to worry about Tera into 18 different types, there are 9 to 12 Pokemon you have to worry about Tera into 18 different types, and that is just uncompetitive, it's unfun, it's a headache. There's just no real place for it in Draft League. I can see some arguments, I guess, like it's a new mechanic, let's try it out, it's fun, and let's just kind of let the meta shape itself. Those are kind of the arguments that I've heard regarding this, and to that I say no. Do we allow Koraidon and Miraidon because we want to let the meta shape itself? No, we do not. Why do we allow a broken mechanic that is able to be contained in some fashion? I think it doesn't make sense to allow it in this fashion, especially when we have so many different alternatives that I will be talking about in the future. And while free Tera, maybe it'll be something fun that you can do with your friends, I don't think in competitive leagues that this has any place. Which brings us to option number 2, free Tera, 1 captain. This is a lot more controlled and a lot more feasible than completely free Tera, because instead of, I don't even know the math, because instead of literally 216 different Tera combinations, that is insanity, by the way. Please do not do free Tera in competitive leagues. You get 18 different types, which is still a lot. It can still be overwhelming, but it's a lot more manageable. There have been different variants with this too, where certain Pokemon cannot Tera. The biggest tour right now is Smog Tour. It's doing a tour like Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant, and certain Pokemon like that just can't Tera. And there's other leagues that I've seen where you can pick this, but you can Tera into anything except your stabs. I think that's also interesting. So I'm watching back the video, and there's one that I did forget to talk about. Currently, UDL is trying something a little bit different from all these ones that I've mentioned, where they're doing something where you pick a Tera captain, and whatever you pick, you get a 20% increase in their point value, but they can Tera into whatever you want. This is another variant of free Tera, 1 captain, and I think it's kind of an interesting take on it, and by no means I think is this a bad way. I'm not going to talk about it too in depth because the video is already pretty long compared to what I want it to be, but I just wanted to throw this in here that I think that this is a very interesting variant. However, again, me personally, I do think that this is still a little bit overwhelming. I think, yes, you're allowing the mechanic to go a little bit crazy, and a lot of people want that. A lot of people want to try the mechanic in this fashion and have only one Pokemon be able to do it and have it be able to do anything and be able to use it to its fullest. And I get that. That makes sense. However, from a competitive perspective, this is still a lot. The best example that I can give to you guys is Dragonite. Dragonite this generation really enjoys Tera. It's actually like a top tier threat this generation, specifically because of Tera. If you guys don't know, it has extreme speed. Tera normal is probably the most popular set at the moment, but in formats like this where it's free Tera, it is almost unbearable. Dragonite has one of the best abilities in the game in multi-scale, paired with Boots. Of course, it's not the best on its own, with a plethora of moves. Like, I'm talking, this thing gets coverage for literally almost every single type, and it gets set up too. It gets Dragon Dance, Agility, it has Roost, it has a lot of different options, and already prepping for it with one Tera type is a nightmare. But this Pokemon specifically encapsulates why it should not be free Tera on one captain. You have to prep not only for Tera banded normal Dragonite with extreme speed, which is already a monster, especially if you have a Steel with no recovery, no ghost, things like that, but now you have to prep for a Dragon Dancing Steel Dragonite that your fairy might not be able to do anything to. Let's say you have Sylveon. You can't do anything to a Tera Steel Dragonite. It just sets up in your face. Or let's say Tera Waters, and then now your Ice type, your Weavile, isn't going to be doing as much damage or be able to break through this Pokemon like it should normally. It's just, in my opinion, this is still completely overbearing. I understand some of these are doing it. They want to try out Tera. That's completely fine. For me, personally, I don't think that this should be the baseline moving forward. I think it's a little bit overbearing. There are other Pokemon that show that this is broken, but I think Dragonite is literally like the best example that you can throw. Feel free to disagree, by the way. Please leave some discussion down below. I'm totally open to discussing things and listening to your guys' feedback, listening to what you guys have to say, and I actually encourage it. I really want to have some discussion with you guys. Moving on to the third option. This one has been the most common in the groups that I've ran with recently, and that is 2 Tera captains. Each one gets one singular type. The variants of this one are, of course, you can just have one type, no limitations. You could have like your Chi, let's say you somehow get Chi and Pao and Dragonite, both of which can have one Tera type. The other variants I've seen is going to be up to 18 or 19, whatever the max point value in that league is. You can have up to that many points of Tera captains. So I have, like in BBR, Toxtricity and Abomasnow, because Toxtricity is 11, Abomasnow is 7. There are pros and cons to this. I've had a lot of fun with it personally, but I want to try to speak objectively here. The main argument I've seen as to why this isn't good compared to some other options is because this is super restricting, and maybe your Tera normal Toxtricity isn't going to have a good matchup half the weeks, and you could really use that Tera Electricity or Tera Fighting even, and you can't do that because you're limited to this one Tera option. And while I do think this makes it more competitive, I do think that is a very valid point. You have potentially a useless Tera on your Pokemon half the weeks, which is really lame, and you could use a transaction to change it, but you're gonna obviously have your opponent know if you change your Tera that specific week, they're probably gonna have to prep for it. They're probably gonna bring it. Makes it a lot easier to prep for it and a lot more restricting. I get that. The argument on the other side is that yes, it makes it restricting, it makes it usable, it makes it playable, it makes it preppable. That's the most important thing in my opinion in draft. It makes it preppable, not super easy to prep for. Tera normal Toxtricity is going to be the example that I keep using here. It's still going to be really hard to prep for, but at least you know it's coming. At least you know that you have to prep for these Tera normal Boombers instead of this Tera Blast fighting type. But I completely get both sides of the argument on this one, and I'm not opposed to it, and that actually leads us into our fourth option, and that is going to be 2 Tera captains. You get your stabs plus 1 type. This is something that my buddy Kaz suggested, and I think personally this is the best suggestion that I've seen so far for Tera types. Now, I haven't seen any variants of this. I actually haven't seen any league run this yet. I would love to see some leagues try to run this. But basically, the idea here is it's not as restricting as 2 Tera captains 1 type, but it's not as open as 1 captain free type. I think 1 captain free type, like I said, not competitive. I think 1 captain 1 type is a little too restrictive. Here is our solution, the solution suggested by my buddy Kaz. I think this is the best solution I've seen. You get your stabs, you get an extra type, and you can kind of like catch your opponent off guard. Your opponent knows what to prep for, but at the same time, you could still bring Tera Dragon Roaring Moon instead of Tera, I don't know, Steel, and you could have a very good matchup with that. It also lets your Tera Pokemon take advantage of different matchups with different types while not being too overwhelming with having to prep for 5 different Tera types, 10 different Tera types, or all of the Tera types. This one I am biased towards. I do think that this is the best suggestion I've seen so far. I don't really think there's too many downsides to this one. I'm still torn between if I think it should be 18 points or 2 Pokemon total with a couple Pokemon banned with Tera. I think those are really your 2 options when it comes to this thing. That is, in my opinion, the best option for Tera captains. And of course, the 5th option, Tera banned completely. I don't think that this is feasible, especially when we have so many different alternatives. Some people don't like to be complicated. They like to have simple bans. They like to just ban something completely or completely allow it. And I get that. That's probably where the free Tera comes from. That's why Smogon up to, I don't even know if it's allowed this or last generation, but you usually see Smogon just outright ban things like Blaziken in Generation 7, and that's the best example I can think of. And I get that. But I don't think banning Tera is the move in this generation. Like I said, me personally, I think this is the best time to get into competitive because I believe there is so much more to think about. I think this is a breath of fresh air. Really makes the metagame a lot more dynamic, a lot more fun, and a lot more long-term. I think that's something that we really lacked with Sword and Shield, was the metagame got stale immediately. But with Tera, it makes it a lot more interesting. It means you don't have to bring the same set to check the same Pokemon every single week. It doesn't mean if you run into Tapu Koko, you're always going to have your specific niche Pokemon to check it, because what if your Tapu Koko is going to be Tera Water? Then what are you going to do? So I think it makes for a longer metagame, and hopefully long term I'll be right. But I'm open to being wrong. I've been wrong once or twice before. Let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know how you think Tera should be utilized in draft, if you think it should be utilized at all. And of course, be sure to answer the question of the day: what is your favorite Pokemon to Tera in any format? Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all of the support you guys have been showing me. And for now, guys, this has been John Jr. signing off.